karakia is actually the start.
Yes.
Ah,
Corrected, Chair, you're correct.
Ticked off again.
such is my life.
Such a show life. And your daughter's not here.
Just in the atmosphere of learning, I think we have been learning this karakia now for at least 12 months.
Yes. Turn it
And I
off.
think we've graduated from having to say the English side.
Yep.
So we're just going to be doing the Māori side, but before I do that, on behalf of the chair, can I just mihi to all of those who are seated in, I guess you describe this as the public gallery, the community gallery. So welcome to this regional council meeting. You can work with me. I'll set the pace, you do the volume, and we'll be sweet at the end of it all. Whakataka,
Whaka, tihau, ki tiuru, whakataka, tihau, ki te tonga, kia mā ki tina, kia uru, kia mā tāra, kia tai, he tio, he huki, he haru,
Tihei Māori ora. And Chair, it's a beautiful day today.
It is. Thank you very much, Petty. We're not doing the English version, even though it might have been quite good for some of our guests. But we will carry on because we've got a big agenda today. So I would also like to welcome all our guests here today, and in a minute we'll get on with our presentations of our environmental awards, and I'll say a little bit more at that point of time. But in the meantime, any apologies? We have one from Charlie, whose sister deceased. Do we have any other apologies? No other apologies. Do we have any notices?
Yes, apology.
Yes, Mike?
I need to be away by 1:30ish.
Well,
I have another hui of equal importance. I need to attend.
we're hoping all of us are going to be away by 1:30ish, Mike. We'll put that in as an apology. Thank you very much. No other notices. So today we are presenting our environmental awards to various organisations and people who have been nominated by councillors. I just want to say before we do that that it's a really pleasing occasion for this council and for me personally to be able to do this, because there's no doubt about it, we're on a journey to improve our environment. We have a lot of legacy issues that we're sorting out, and all you people sitting in the gallery, as Perry said, have got in their boots and all, shovels, and are doing the job. The regional council can do so much, but alone we will not be able to achieve this. We depend on our community and people such as yourself to lead the way, and if everyone planted a tree in Hawke's Bay, that's 160,000 trees, we would get there a whole lot quicker than just leaving it down to the poor old ratepayer. So first of all, general congratulations to you all. Serious good work that you all do, and most of you are well known to me, and it's been a pleasure to know you, and it's been a pleasure to see the enormously hard work that you put in. So we will start with the award to Helen Howard. So if you could come up, Helen. You were nominated by Henny, so she is going to speak to you, and you are the only one who's unknown to me, so I'm really looking forward to finding out about your work, which is in the climate warming space, I hear.
Yes, among other things.
So I'll hand the floor over to you, Henny.
Tēnei te mihi kia koe Helen, kia koutou katoa, ngā manuhiri, nau mai haere mai, nau mai hoki mai, tēnei te mihi kia koutou katoa. So I nominated Helen Howard for this award of appreciation in your community action in terms of looking after our kaiao, our environment. And Helen here she's still a part of managing our Fridays for Future with our rangatahi, our youth who come together on Fridays and let us all know that we've got to take action in terms of our climate. So I thank you for that, and also your initiative with coordinating the public and the community picking up rubbish, especially plastic, before it heads out into our moana. So it's with great pleasure that I can award you, and on behalf of the council, award you with this taonga, ahakoa he iti he pounamu. So although it is small, it is precious, and it's of rākau, of our Nico, and our Waipatiki Reserve actually has a lot of Nico. And so on behalf of us, thank you very much for all the mahi you do for our environment.
Kia ora. Thank you very much, Haniwa, for nominating me for this award. I feel very humbled, and obviously I don't do the work that I do for recognition. I do it for our tamariki and the future of our planet. And I want to also acknowledge Haniwa and all the work that she does tirelessly working for the environment with her husband Cam. And I want to acknowledge the council for declaring a climate emergency, which is obviously the first step in tackling the problems that we have moving forward. So really appreciate you, Haniwa, and the council. So kia ora.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Heniwai. So our next award is for the Hawke Park, Waiora. Would you like to come up, please? Are you alone here today? Mike, you come up too. So, before I give this award to the Hawke Park Hapu, I just want to talk a little bit about Hawke Park because whenever I go around the country now, people quote Hawke Park back to me because it's a very unique example of the Hawke's Bay Regional Council representing the community and for Hapu getting together to develop a historical park based on land ownership and management. So they meet monthly with our team and they organise what they're going to do, so it is a true and real partnership. So much so I put some pictures on the wall there because Waiora and her sisters and a few other people from Koipatiki, we gather periodically, and Rick, and we plant trees, and it's quite interesting. We look like a bunch of Appalachian hippies from the Appalachians up there, but some real work gets done by the Hapu and by members of the Regional Council. So it has been a seriously good endeavour and one that I am particularly proud of. And Waiora, she is the chairman of the Hapu group and she leads them. And you couldn't do something like this without a person of her talent and a person who's able to bring people together to make something like this that's really unique work. Unique in New Zealand. It's the first time that a regional council has done a partnership in land holding and in management on a historical park. And I know that all the council's really proud of it. So congratulations, Waiora. Now we have something for you here.
A check?
This is
Big check.
Yes, you can put that up in the house. We can put it up in the marae. Right. And thanks, Mike, for your work on it too. Mike always turns up to the walk-arounds that we get, and Mike has been incredibly instrumental in us helping get another park off the ground, which we wouldn't have done without your help, Mike. So, Waiora, do you want to say a few words?
Thank you very much for this. I really am representing the whole committee, of which Mike is part of, and Wairiki Davis, who is the driving force behind all this, really. I just follow along and do what I need to do. So, kia ora koutou.
Kia ora.
This is a flex, so it is our harakeke, and as we know, harakeke is one of those things that binds us all together. And so we just want to recognise the other recipients that are receiving the awards today. Without community groups such as all of us, it would be a very sad region that we would live in. So I congratulate you for your championing the courses that you do. We wish you all of the success going forward, and between us, we hope we encourage others to pick up the mantle and to make our region a far more beautiful and attractive place, and giving back to Papatūāna. Kia ora.
Our next award is to the Maitotra Tree Trust, and they were nominated by Craig, so Craig, come up. I just want to say a few words. It's incredible that it's taken 12 months for us to recognise this trust, because they are quite amazing. And any one of you who have visited the Maitotra, the work that this trust do, will see just how amazing they are. And has previously been led by Pat, but I understand here you've taken a step back. You've got a new chair, I saw on your brochure, and you're now moved to Te Wonga, so you're getting to the ocean. You're definitely hills to the ocean. So I'll hand over to Craig, and would your representatives like to come up?
All of them, come on, we're going to do a big, everyone else get a big hug. So Rex is going to give you all a big hug.
I'm going to shake hands.
Centre.
Benda.
Centre.
Ana koko.
Well done. Just one of the reasons, one of the many reasons I nominated the Maitotra Tree Trust is actually this incredible ability and balance with environmental passion, just simply doing the right thing, treasuring, securing, and managing some streams, some just clean water, but the business acumen, with passion, getting dirt under the fingernails, just getting on with the job, evidenced by just walking up the stream, and you'll just see an incredible result, which is about, I don't know, 2/3 done or something. Half, 2/3 by next Thursday, please. No pressure. But the most stunning thing I think their achievement is, and if Richard or Pat to talk to that, is the agreement of about 50 or so separate landowners, of which who the Maitotra stream backs into or goes across their land, who all sign up for simply doing the right thing and have pitched in their own way. And it's just an incredible example and model, I think, which we can be repeated across the plains at least. So I'll hand over to you yourself, Richard. Congratulations.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks, everyone. We really appreciate this award and the recognition, both for the trust and the trustees who do a lot of voluntary work behind the scenes, but also we have a lot of corporate sponsors now and landowners who are all buying into it and are really working with us. The trust started in 2002, and it very much was hands to the grindstone then. It's moved a long way from there, and we certainly are making huge progress in the last few years. We really appreciate the partnership we have with the Regional Council, both in terms of clearing willows and also we hang on to your coattails in terms of buying of plants and planting of them, and that has been a big advantage for us as well. So we really appreciate your support in that, and obviously having a Regional Council representative on the Trust is a huge advantage for that. I also recognise all of you. I recognise a number of you have provided community volunteer work yourselves, and have over a number of years provided public support, and I acknowledge you all and wish you a very Merry Christmas.
Kia ora.
Awesome. Good?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So our next nomination was for a award that I'm particularly keen on. That is to Turners and Growers Global. And just to give you a little bit of background before I hand over to Jareth, Turners and Growers are a very large fruit growing produce company, marketing company based in New Zealand, and have been here for hundreds of years really, as long as probably the oldest fruit company in New Zealand. And their kaupapa really is driven through innovation, new varieties, new growing systems, and they are definitely at the front end of the fruit growing industry, which is so precious to our community and provides huge amount of wealth to our community and jobs. So I'm very pleased that Jeff nominated them, and I'll hand it over. And would the Turners come up, please?
Come to the front, guys. Come on. Good. Great to have you here. When we, in September, October, started talking about environmental awards, I thought by myself, look, we got to do something in our primary sector. And who's outstanding in their field? Well, there actually were 5 of them outstanding in their field. They were actually big piles of compost, of chipped trees. Remember, next to the motorway, there were these 5 piles.
Yep.
And on a frosty morning, they're already at work. I hadn't even got up, they already were at work because there's the steam coming out of the top. They're already decomposing. And I thought, this is brilliant. You know, it is what we're all about, especially with Will on council. Carbon is so important to us for in the soil, but also from a Rex perspective, who's so against smoke in the environment. So I thought, Turners and Growers are the ones. And now I started to listen a little bit more to their staff and what they're about. And it's a chicken and egg thing. If you see a company that's either good for the environment or good to their people, you know that you actually got something really serious in front of you. And you find that in Turners and Growers. First and foremost, they're really about their people. Not just that there's always enough tea and sugar in the smoker room. They actually go further than that. They develop their people, and they actually have ladders set out before them so they actually can rise in their careers. Really smart thinking. But the same in the environment as well. They actually plant on their own bat. We haven't heard about it. We've got another large family corporate grower who always talks about their riparian planting. Well, this company actually plants a lot more trees than that particular company, and they don't talk about it. You can find it if you want to. So they've planted here in Hawke's Bay, they've planted in Kitikiti, and I think they've also now planted in Nelson as well. Riparian plants in any streams or rivers that actually run through their properties, they have assessed and actually have got a planting plan or already have planted. Biosecurity for them is very important, but also energy. Just to let you know that Turners and Growers, they also have hot houses, glass houses. They, in 2016, already started thinking about how can we reduce our energy. They've been able to reduce their energy take from the grid and to the equivalent in the first year, and they can run about 384 houses. So that's the amount of electricity that they saved that now actually is being used in houses, which is fantastic. Also, their way of actually reducing and recycling, but also refusing waste. So they're large sites and conflict of interest. I actually provide them with my product. So my product can't just come wrapped in plastic, wrapped in cardboard, and they will actually refuse it. They have certain standards that I have to deliver to them in the amount of material that I actually give to them, which is actually really clever. And they've actually taken it further, because there's 3 people standing here. They actually take all of this thinking across 1,500 of their staff, which by now is about 1,700 staff, but at the time when they actually put this together, which is the green growing concept, they have about 1,500 staff, and they actually want their staff to take the thinking that they've put into place in their workplace. They actually want to take that home and implement it as well. And I think, James, that's something we can really learn from as an organisation as well. So what they actually have done, they made a conscious decision, not because Rex put pressure on them, they made a conscious decision to no longer burn trees that were ready for development or were diseased, but they actually have mulched them. And that's where the 5 piles that you saw on the motorway. That wasn't an easy task for you guys, I understand, because what do you do with them? And that's why they were there for so long. You can't just put it into the ground, because once you put carbon into the ground, bacteria get to them and start mulching away and taking a whole lot of nitrogen out of the soil, and then the new trees that you plant, they're going to starve. So it actually had to be decomposed first before you could bring it back. But what it also has done, they've actually now have set the standard. So other corporates and growers now have started thinking, well, if T&G can do it, and it is possible, and these machines are now here because they're here because T&G demanded them, they will now also start putting that practice into place. And I assure you, Rex, in the next 2 to 3 years, you hardly will see a smokestack from an orchard any longer. Okay, that has to change, and I'm fully behind that. And I think Rex is right. He just made a lot of noise. Turners and Growers has actually gone and done. So without further ado, it really gives me great pleasure to give you guys this award, and hopefully it will have a very important place somewhere in the boardroom here in Hastings. Okay, thank you very much. Much appreciated. No doubt you've got a reply.
Yeah, sure, I will do that. So, kia ora, my name's Samantha. I'm our Sustainability Manager at TNG. Until recently, I was actually based in our Auckland office and had the pleasure of joining our Hawke's Bay office this year. But this initiative actually had nothing to do with me directly. It was done by our team. And I think that's a tribute to the culture that we're creating at TNG around sustainability and caring for our environment, but also caring for our people. So we've evolved a bit, I think, through over the last few years, and we're embedding a culture of considering kaitiakitanga throughout what we do, and we're helping to educate our people on that. And that's led to initiatives, I think, that people have taken really strongly and that we can be proud of. So, yeah, this is really a huge kia ora and thank you to our team for doing this work, and I think they'll be proud to have this.
That was a good quality speech.
Don't say much. Thank you, everybody. I'll move back to my seat. To our visitors, we understand you've probably all got jobs and things to go back to, but you're welcome to stay if you wish, but we completely understand it when you leave. Thank you very much.
What's that picture behind you there, Chair?
Oh, I put that one of you up there.
Thank you.
I thought I recognised from here.
That's when you were planting the kaikatea.
Yeah, that's the Kakatea.
That's the hillbillies you refer to.
Yeah.
The Appalachians.
The Appalachians. Right. Right, everybody. Thanks for your little speech, Sheriff. I'll be considering it through the meeting.
Payback, is it? Payback, is it?
I thought he was...
But, you know, they're all incredible stories, aren't they? They are all incredible stories. And you know, there's another... You could have another 4.
Easy.
Easy. So, it's they're just the standouts, but there's also a lot of other people doing a lot of other really good stuff. Okay, conflict of interest declarations, are there any? If not, confirmation of the minutes, 2 minutes, 18th of November and 25th of November. We'll do the 18th first. Are there any comments? I just thought on that move, I thought Neil moved it and Haniwai seconded it.
What was that?
In the minutes, alternative for recommendation. Didn't you move the alternative?
I think I seconded it.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
It was correct.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, I lost here. Okay. That's fine. Someone moved that the minutes are correct? Rick will? Neil will? Second?
I have a second.
All those in favour? Confirming those minutes. Thank you very much. The second set of minutes on the 25th of November. Any corrections?
I'll move that correct.
Thank you, Martin. We'll move that correct. Craig will second those. All those in favour?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you very much. Follow-ups from our previous meeting. We have there.
I did have a couple, Mr. Chair.
A couple of points, Mike,
One up.
to the follow-ups.
Yes. You.
Nice.
So like
Down the other end of the page, wrong end of the pack, I'm afraid.
the
Sorry, Chair, just in relation to the commentary provided, I understand that the draft conditions for the
Yeah, I've got those.
have been circulated, so that's been actioned. Otherwise, all those items have been or under action.
So one was in regards to the cultural standards in regards to the three waters. The question was asked, how does council intend to, implement or action? So it has received the cultural report. Just where is it going with it? Basically, was the question that was being asked.
Through you, Chair, the Three Waters report, of which the cultural, I think it was a cultural business case, cultural case was included, has remained as an incomplete piece of work, and that's because we're awaiting direction from central government, who are the primary funders of this piece of work, as to how they would like the project to proceed, in light of the fact that the government has pledged to reform the Three Waters space. And the Hawke's Bay project, which was initiated prior to the government's reform program and funded separately, is essentially just on hold at this time. So we would anticipate at some point in the new year that we will get the green light from central government to complete the project and bring that documentation to this table.
Oops, if I could add to that, Chair.
Sure.
And so the cultural case, as part of the Hawke's Bay Three Waters review, was across all 5 councils. It wasn't specifically for HBRC per se, and the cultural case has been promoted directly back to DIA recently and reinforced as feedback alongside the substantive document in terms of DIA's recent, oh no, it's not recent, 2 months ago, their round of Three Waters community engagement. So not for HBRC specifically, part of the 5 council approach in terms of the HB Three Waters review.
Thank you.
Right with that?
Yes, and there was one more, number 4, in regard to Māori representation, in regards to the poll and the status comment. So adding to the project plan, pending confirmation, should the legislation change, remove the ability of the 5% of the votes to demand a poll. It doesn't actually tell us where we're going from there, if that was to happen. And I think that's the part that's kind of missing.
So, Chair, a project plan is in development for community engagement on the question of Māori constituencies, which was something which was resolved by Council when it last debated this matter. And staff will be bringing forward a proposed project to Council in the new year on that.
Thank you.
Still doesn't answer that question, right? Because the question has not been answered by council.
Well, yeah, that's kind of sense. Perhaps having the ability to think out between Christmas and New Year, we might get there.
Certainly, Chair, I can confirm that we have been in discussions with officials from the Department of Internal Affairs on the prospect of legislative reform, and we are expecting to be kept up to date with developments as Cabinet considers these matters and decisions made.
Thank you. Any other follow-ups? Michelle?
I know I was supposed to bring it up in my items,
No,
but
you don't have to. You can bring it up now.
sorry, it's for you, James. Significant organisational activities. I always look at the catchment reports, and there's nothing in the agenda today,
So,
especially with the discharges back home.
yes, so look, I'm happy to deal with that particular item if it's added to the minor items for today. There isn't a significant activities report for this council meeting, simply because the meeting's occurring a couple of weeks earlier than normal because of the Christmas break. So it's been a short period between the last council meeting and this council meeting, and so we made the decision that there wasn't an awful lot of new activity to report, and it was going to put an undue burden on staff during that this last week or two of the year.
Okay. Yeah.
Michelle, would you be happy if we give James that 5 minutes to talk about that? We'll give you a slot. Okay, let's move to that if there are no other issues for minor items on the agenda. So we'll take you out, Michelle, putting James on.
Yeah,
Talk about-
discharges Wairau River.
Discharges Wairau River. Craig?
Yes, council communications.
Oh, we were lining up here, aren't we? Neil?
Napier flood response.
Napier flood response. Anyone?
I promise to be very brief. Social ecology. 3 hours only.
Aroha Maga, another
Really short
one.
meeting, wasn't it?
Michelle?
Removal of wood bait dams.
Yes. Irrelevant.
Rick?
Lagoima requests.
Well,
Tuki trails.
so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's a record.
The last day of the year.
Frustration amongst the councillors.
Last day of the year.
And you didn't have one during Christmas. I thought you were going to make a little apology to me in the 5 minute above. Okay, we got a bunch of minor items. So we'll move to the first decision item. Neil, if you could do the report and recommendations from corporate and strategic and make some further comment if you wish.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillors will recall the meeting of the Corporate Strategic Committee, and the paper sets out the agenda items there. I'll just quickly refer to the highlights of that. The Section 17A report on the works group. I think the only item to come out of that will be a further report on the strategic direction for that. That's something that will be happening in due course. We had that excellent presentation on the Fuse project. That's the new financial system, and the impacts of that will become more and more apparent as we make our way forward. But that was good to see infrastructure development from council, much needed. The most significant reporting from a public perspective, Mr. Chair, I believe, is the compliance annual report, and that's demonstrating the vast tome of work that's done by council in terms of the regulatory and consenting functions. Substantial amounts of work going. I think the issues essentially for council going forward are the municipal wastewater issues that continue to be a major cause of concern. The one point that I'd like to make in that, Mr. Chair, is the looking forward, council being very aware of the compliance of its own consents, and I know that staff are really focusing in on getting that particular part of our performance significantly improved for the coming year. We had a report on the council's corporate carbon footprint, and I'm pleased to see a reduction in our energy use by something like 5% during that first quarter of the year. So much appreciated there. I would make one comment in regard to our measurement of the council's footprint, and to contemplate further how we handle recording and measuring our achievement as an organisation. And I note the reluctance to consider and measure the carbon outputs of the entire region, but I think it's important to have up on a dashboard the entire carbon outputs of the region and our ability to influence what other councils and other organisations are doing around it. So I would suggest that we in fact do be bold and consider the entire region in addition to our own footprint, and how we might mitigate that. And finally, Mr. Chair, I put it in the context of our compliance report, where we do consider the consents and monitor consents across the board. We're not directly responsible for compliance, but nevertheless we measure them. So I put it in the same basket that I think we do have a role to play, because it's so close to our heart in measuring our regional output of carbon and we ought to put a hand up to trying to influence it down. So they're the issues that arise out of the CNS report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Neil. Will you move your report?
I'll move the report.
I'll second it.
Second from Rick. Rick, do you wish to speak?
Oh, thank you.
Anyone
I
else
was
wish
there.
to speak on the report? Craig, do you wish to speak?
No, that's a pretty good summation, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. All those in favour of receiving the report?
Aye.
Against? It's carried. Thank you very much, Neil, and thanks for the enormous amount of work that you and, do I call Craig your assistant, or is he sort of...
Oh, we've got Batman and Robin there, have we?
But you and Craig, you definitely put in a huge amount
Bit
of
of a
work.
Laurel and Hardy.
Huge amount of work on this, and we all really appreciate it. Thank you very much. So we're going to move to item 8, but before I do, I just want to welcome all our guests that came in. They didn't come for that at the beginning, so I wasn't able to welcome you. So it's a pleasure to have you all here today, and I guess you're all looking for some certainty where you're going, and hopefully today councillors will give that to you. So we have a presentation from the EIT and the Sports Trust, the Indoor Sports Trust. Craig, are you delivering that, or not that Craig? No. A lot of Craigs. There's a string of them. I got a string of Craigs.
Take us all out in one bullet.
It's like a fishing line.
Well, you're in the firing line, I'll just put you there.
So who's going to?
I'm a snapper and there's a groper.
So who's going to give the? Okay.
Craig and Chris.
Craig and Chris will. Could you come up to the front, please?
We've already lost 2 minutes of their presentation time.
Yeah, I'm not sure how long your presentation takes, but we're trying to get through things, so if you can keep it.
Yeah.
And I think
Just
we
a
are all in
summary.
positions of understanding things. And I think our staff are going to want to give a presentation as well. So
I have for this. Yeah, I was looking
Yeah, you were going to do the first one, hey, Dad.
So why don't we keep questions to the end, otherwise
Please.
Yeah. Welcome, gentlemen. Floor is yours.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you for the welcome.
Up here, be able to see it in front of you as well.
Oh, yes,
and it's
okay.
just a click of button to
Button to there. Kia ora. Look, I'm Chris Collins, Chief Executive at EIT. Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk, and I've been asked to talk specifically around an EIT aspect of the proposal, so it's quite a short presentation, so I'll whip through that quite quickly, and you're welcome to ask any questions. The main key thing here is that we support the PGH project. There's significant pressure on court space in Hawke's Bay, we know that, and actually there is a need to sort of provide some sort of expanded facility, and we think that actually doing it around the PGA as a regional facility makes a lot of sense. So as far as EIT is concerned, we're fully supportive of this, and we think this is certainly something that's needed within the region. We'll also make some land available that needs a little bit of our land to be able to sort of take the project forward, and with the right sort of right-of-way provisions for both parties, etc., we'll ensure that that's able to occur. One of the significant issues that sits for EIT, of course, is that there's a lot of parking pressure around EIT in that area of Taradale. And if you've been along there, normally it's on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, particularly 9 o'clock in the morning through to about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's pretty crazy. Prior to PGA being established, and as you know, EIT was one of the sort of foundation contributors into the PGA facility, and we contributed, I think it was up to around half the cash in the initial build. Was that we had about 280 car parks that we used on Gloucester Street and on the reserve land opposite. And there was an average walking distance of about 250 metres for that to access those car parking. So part of the PGA development had a resource consent for 280 car parks on the PGA space and on the reserve land. And that gave an average walking distance of about 400 metres, so it increased it slightly. The arrangement also, obviously, is that there's a shared arrangement around parking for both PGA and EIT. So, i.e., when PGA have events in the weekends and the like, and at nights, they're able to utilise the parking across the EIT campus, and likewise, EIT has rights during the day to able to use the parking in the PGA space. So with the proposed new courts build, there were a couple of options that came up that sort of came to the surface. The first one was around the parking option over the stop bank. This has got an average distance of about 350 metres to the campus. And the other option was to actually build the car parking behind the PGA space on reserve land, which quite significantly increases the walking distance to some 600 metres to the campus centre. I mean, as you well know, in Hawke's Bay, there's a bit of an expectation you can park outside the shop you want to walk into, and actually people do want to park close. We're certainly concerned about the fact that this increases the distance. It also actually does cut down the options for future development for PGA as well, in terms of their future development options. Just as a matter of interest, our current demographics, we've got over 600 students at the moment over the age of 40. We've got 275 students over the age of 50. And we think it's actually, and the board and our board think that it's impractical to position the EIT car parks nearly half a kilometre away from the campus. And we also think it's not really in the spirit of the original intent of the resource consent, which was to replace the curbside parking and the reserve land parking that was quite close to the campus. So we believe, actually, and when whoever proposed it, I'm not sure where it came from actually, we thought that the option of parking over the stop bank was really quite an elegant solution firstly, it doesn't impact on the community reserve greenland parkland space that sits behind, and which is used by the community. The flooding, we believe, of that area is very rare. We monitor this area very carefully ourselves. Our stormwater infrastructure flows out through this area and flows into the Tutaikuri river. And so we actually, when there's any hint of any flooding likely to occur in that space, we're keeping a very close eye on that area because of the floodgates. If they're not closed properly, it actually backs into our campus, so it flows back into our campus, and our campus gets flooded. So we would take a different view than the forecast or estimate that I think was in the reports that we saw that suggested this is a 5-year flooding. We are confident there's been no flooding of that specific area in the last 25 years because we monitor it on a regular basis. So we do think that the proximity to campus will incentivise usage of parking. And one of our concerns would be by pushing parking yet further away again, we'll just see an increase in aberrant parking that happens all along Gloucester Street, down Springfield Road, on that intersection by the bridge. I mean, people just park on every bit of green space they can find, up against, on curbs where there's technically no parking along that area. So we do think that it's important to incentivise people to actually park where we want them to park. So we thought, our view was that this was quite an elegant solution. Certainly had the risk, and I can understand the council's concerns about this being flood-prone area potentially, and the stop banks. We are certainly aware in other places in the country where they do provide parking on those types of locations, and we believe this is actually one that is a manageable risk. And we actually have an area of our campus which is actually identified as a flood. I don't know what you technically call it. Is it it's an area that's to flood, and it's part of our car parking, and we actually have that as part of our infrastructure and decision making around when those types of events might occur to make sure there's no cars in those areas already. So anyway, we support the PGA. We think this proposal, we're very obviously pleased to see that government has been prepared to provide funding for it, and we're prepared to make some land available. And we think that there's a really elegant solution here about using some land that can provide parking and also meet the sort of resource consent intents of the original consent. So thank you, Rex.
Thank you very much. That's a very presentation. Thank you. Now, so you represent the EIT.
Yeah.
Do you,
Dick is our capital planner.
For the EIT?
For EIT, yes. So this is EIT at the moment. I think Craig's going to talk for PGA. So we're talking for EIT board.
Yeah.
So I now have a board and no longer have a council. As of the 1st of April, so this is the board has discussed this, and this was what they've supported.
Well, thank you very much. I think that was good information for councillors. Craig,
Do you want questions?
sorry?
You want questions?
Do you want questions? Yep, sure. Neil?
Hi, Chris. Chris, I just wanted to know, as a part of the option for the eastern option, there was some land, EIT land, that was potentially required for that, which EIT were unwilling to part with or make available. Why was that?
The proposal that's on the table at the moment, we're making land available for. Is that what you're referring to?
No, well,
no, the prior options before that.
Well,
so,
yeah. So the information we had was that the EIT was unwilling to part with a parcel of land to enable the option to the eastern parking zone option.
Oh, okay.
Why was EIT unwilling to do that? It seems to have leg tripped that option substantially.
Okay. Well, that area, the land you're talking about, is the old camping ground, essentially, and we have our halls of residence accommodation on that land, and that, of course, is land available for future builds of student accommodation. So we've got about 92, 95 beds, in that space at the moment, and that land is there for future development.
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to make is that you're wanting this, you're supporting PGA on it, you're wanting this to happen, but you weren't willing to make available land if that option was being developed. So I'm concerned that as a consequence, that option became less achievable because EIT wouldn't cooperate with that part of it.
Well, I mean, we need land to build student residential accommodation. We can't build it over the stop banks. We can't go back into reserve land of Nature City Council.
You want your cake and eat it too. You want a car park in the right position.
No, we're there to serve the needs of Hawke's Bay around education and to provide accommodation for students who need to come from out of town, and we have a lot of students coming from out of town who need to live.
I don't buy that at all.
Yeah.
Can I?
Land available. We should have made it available.
Can I answer part of that? Part of the project scope for the PGA funding was that the land or the project was ready to go straight away. To design it on a piece of land and for us to go through the process of releasing the land through our new organisation wasn't going to hit the timescale of this project as far as the funding timing was concerned. So that was one part of the...
Pretty lame stuff, really.
Okay, come on.
I've got a question.
Michelle, then Martin.
Kia ora, korua. I'm just a bit concerned about the lack of a cultural impact assessment, and I no need to remind everybody about Tamata Peak.
Yep.
And why isn't this in the report? Why hasn't it been commenced? And what are the environmental impacts? And most especially, talk about if it's in a flood zone, consideration for climate change.
Yeah, that's a question for the PGA project.
Cultural impact assessment, probably one of the main issues.
Okay, we'll hold that question for Craig, because it's a good one, Michelle. Martin?
Yeah, thank you. Look, I just thank you for the presentation. We understand where you're coming from. I guess the question I've got is, could you appreciate how this sits with us? We're effectively backed into a corner here with EIT saying it will not provide that small section of land. It's quite a small strip. It doesn't look like it's going to be used for any particular purpose if the stop bank option doesn't proceed. And I guess, whatever might become of the discussion on this issue is yet to be revealed. But can you appreciate how we're feeling rather sort of backed into the corner on the 16th of December with a date tomorrow on an issue that's the most significant asset we've got, our flood protection scheme? You can can see how you've kind of manoeuvred us into that spot, and I think that's Councillor Curtin's point.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This was considered by our board a couple of months ago, which is when they discussed it. They looked at the parking options, the original consents, and said, yeah, look, and this seemed, in fact, to be quite honest, we were not aware that the regional council were opposed to this.
Well, I haven't said that, but I'm saying we're feeling rather constrained in our options as a result of a rather absolute position that seems to have been taken by one of the stakeholders.
Can I reshape the question? Did you not think to contact the owner of the land when you're making decisions about how you'd use it?
Well, this is a question you need to put to PGA.
No, I'm talking about you and your board.
Yeah.
What Neil is saying, you and your board said we prefer the option over the stop bank months ago, but you knew you didn't own that. You knew we were the owners, so why didn't you talk to us immediately about it?
Because we're not running this project. We're a bit like you. We're being approached to ask whether they could use our land.
But you're making consideration about other people's property. You said your board decided on it.
Our board decided they would release the reserve land that we have, the piece of facility land we have, and of course this impacts on our car parking. The aspect of the PGA redevelopment is that the car parking that's currently there for EIT disappears.
I think anyway, these are questions for Craig.
Yeah.
More than for the EIT guys. Jeff, is yours for the EIT? Because I want to be the last question here, and then I'm going to put Craig.
Mine is definitely EIT. I don't get something. I don't get is. Thank you for your presentation, and it's very clear. But as a student organisation, I haven't heard, and you're actually even contrary. You're talking about 600 metres too far, and you're saying we've got students over 50. I'm 59. I walk big cities in the world, you know. Don't put us in a category where we don't want to walk the distance,
absolutely.
okay? But I haven't heard anywhere that you actually actively trying to promote to your student body that they should get out of their cars, who are polluting the world, and warming it up, and actively promote, and my councillors will smile at this, cycling and walking. Because you got anywhere in the world, any university, the best university fourth in the world is Wageningen, is remote, but their students bike, they don't ride, okay?
Yeah.
And you should, in your presentation, have given us the confidence that at least you're trying to actually get your cars out of the way, and we don't have to park them over the stop bank or into the reserve. Have you got any policies in that area?
Yes, absolutely. And we've actually, I think, been engaging, with the regional council about public transport options, and we've been doing it for the last, 2 or 3 years at least. 8 years. We want less students bringing cars less, but we have quite an extensive catchment. You know, when you look at someone who's trying to come from Flaxmere, that's not a simple, straightforward route. And those are some of the students and cohorts that we're trying to reach. So absolutely, we want less people using cars, and we certainly support the cycling options, and we have been active on that with the regional council and the other key stakeholders in the community around that. Yes, perhaps my apologies if I was asked to focus on the car parking thing with my presentation, so that's the aspect I've just presented on. This isn't our project. This is the PGA's project, and they will be speaking to that. They've asked us for access to some of our land. And of course we lose some of our parking as a result of this project, and so that's the focus of what I'll come to explain around that.
Thank you, Mike. Mike, you're the last question, mate.
So very, very similar to Jeff. So what I got out of your presentation, you currently have parking problems as it is.
Yes.
Yourselves.
Yeah.
And I suppose, like Jeff, I didn't hear anything that came out of you that says, regardless of whether this goes through or not, these are some of the proposals we're putting forward to resolve our issues. The answer is only we seem to get, we're going to create more car parks. Seems to be two options, one at 350 metres and one at 660 metres. Those are the two things that have come forward that somehow are going to resolve the issue. I don't believe that for a minute. I believe the issues will still be there. We basically have a society that believes that, as you say, want to park up and drive outside their classroom.
We're very supportive about improving public transport options, and we've been engaging with your council around that. We're very keen to see some solutions on that front and less people using cars.
Thank you, Chris. We're going to wind it up there. Thanks for your presentation. It's like a marae here. You've got to take the heat.
Yeah, no, absolutely, no problem. I'm happy to answer questions.
Yeah, we've answered the question. So we'll let Craig come on now and give his presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Look, not too long ago there was nothing there. These guys put $3 million in. You were the next biggest financial contributor to establish three courts. So it's been a long time now. So thanks for allowing us to present. We've got some of our board members here and some of our project team. We started in 2016. I met with Mike 80, is it? Was that his name?
Yeah.
And I was so disappointed when I came back and he'd gone because he was so enthusiastic about the project. I then met with a Graham Edmondson?
Or Edmondson.
No, Edmondson. Yep, who was a long flash title. And we then met with yourself and Rex, and you gave me clear direction. Piss off until you've exhausted every single other opportunity. And that's, we didn't expect to get the shovel-ready money. We were working through how we were going to raise the balance, and the shovel-ready money came along. That's created a problem, and it's created the issue that you've identified, and suddenly we've got to make decisions. So it's been a difficult world, not helped by not having my presentation up yet.
Craig, in your presentation, just be cognizant that councillors are all over this now, so we've just got to, get down and make a decision. I think, we're not going to persuade anyone at this point whatever way we're going to go, and I'm not suggesting we're going to go any particular way.
Yep.
But
skim quicker then.
Skim quick.
Yep. Practice. We only need 15 minutes. Nice video.
Don't need that.
You need less than 15.
I would improve New Zealand's productivity rate.
Well, Mr. Chairman, can I put it this way? We don't need to be persuaded of the merits of the Pettigrew Green Arena expansion.
Cool.
Yeah.
No, we don't. No.
We got that.
Got music, got sound.
Well done, Mark.
Who's the Jaffers?
It is so awesome for particularly young people to come together in one massive venue, be able to have fun with their friends, and for their family to all be able to watch from a great viewing area.
Basketball participation is growing rapidly over the last few years. I mean, you'd all know that.
Futsal has become a lot more popular.
Volleyball is a growing sport.
At the moment it's pretty limited with training venues and what nights you can play. All the sports want to go indoors.
We're at a stage where we are going to have to potentially have some teams that can't play because we've just run out of space and we can't fit them in.
Having a facility that has 11 courts would be amazing.
In Hawke's Bay, indoor courts especially, are going to increase the opportunities for our young ones to play, and the conditions, as we can see, it's pretty windy today, so our young ones' games are often cancelled with the rain, even in Term 4, and having an indoor experience for all levels of the players will be amazing.
It means that parents don't have to go to multiple venues for their kids to play. It's all could be on one night.
For me it would really benefit because we could have tournaments inside, our games won't get cancelled, so we will be able to play every week and not have weeks off.
The expansion project will allow us to ensure that we can meet the demands but also have growth opportunities for the future.
To have 11 more courts, you'll get that cross-pollination between sports, we'll get more boys playing alongside the girls, we're going to create that real community atmosphere with going indoors.
You know, this new stadium it's well worth its weight in gold. I think it'd be very beneficial for the Hawke's Bay.
I support the expansion project. I want to see more places to play futsal and a lot more teams playing.
I'm all for the expansion of the Pettigrew Green Arena.
We support the Pettigrew Green Arena expansion.
I fully support the PGA expansion project. It's something we need to do now. It is becoming a real struggle, so please get behind it. Thank you.
And one of the problems that we've created ourselves.
So awesome for.
Let's see if this one works. Sure you don't want to watch it again?
No, we don't. Can I just say to you that I thought Martin Williams spoke for us all, and we don't need to be persuaded of the merits of the case.
Yeah. So this is the whole basis of what we've done in terms of planning was for the community. There are other spin-offs that result, i.e. you've got events that we potentially could increase bed nights from 10,000 to 40,000 a year. It's huge, but that's just a spin-off. We're building it for the community, so it was never our intention. And this is probably going to be the single most significant financial investment in the well-being of our youth. 80 to 90% of the participants and regular users are under the age of 19. I won't dwell on this one because you'd be well aware of the social. We think there's going to be a huge ability in terms of the economy and the community and culture and the capacity and the ability to have events. We've got shovel-ready money. That causes a problem. That causes an immense amount of pressure to have to deliver to particular deadlines, and some of your staff will be aware of those issues. They don't say to you, come back to us with a problem, we'll give you more time. We had a deadline to meet in terms of appointing a potential construction company. The next deadline is actually the contract. They're all pressure deadlines. The next deadline is resource consent. So we've got a fair amount of pressure on us to meet the requirements. We've got to start building towards the end of March. Got to finish it in 2022. We've got the potential to have a full year, touch wood, 2023. And where we go from here, we believe that every 5 years we're going to have to build another 2 basketball courts. And our program is destined to do that. We've got approximately 35% of our funding is coming from the government. That's the shovel-ready money. If we can't deliver on time, we're out. And Mr. Nash has made that very, very clear. So those were the 2 options, and as you can see, there's a bit of, the sliver of land we're talking about is here from EIT. That's about 400 square metres. It doesn't look like it, but it is about half a decent section of a house. They've said, yes, you can just about have that, but you can see why we need it. It needs to go around. We have a safety thing going right around the stadium. Okay, so we need that land off them, and you heard them speak before. The Napier City Council, as you probably are aware, voted unanimously to support over the stop bank. You can see there that as we expand, it becomes a problem. So our preferred option is over the stop bank. Now we don't know how many we're going to have to build. We're hoping we're only going to build what we've got now, and I'll show you the next slide, which gives you an idea of what we want to build. But in the end, we want to build a destination car park. You appreciate EIT use the car park during the day. They don't use it in school holidays. They don't use it in December and January. So there's a real opportunity to create something for the community use. PGA use it at night. We don't tend to use it during the school holidays unless we've got events on. But there's a huge opportunity to create a real decent facility over the riverbank. We don't want to impact on our development going forward. And as you can see, if we end up getting away with building that space, that'll fit probably in about there, or if you will go into here, that's the current dirt bike track or pump track that you've got there. And we want it to be a destination. We want it to look really something for everyone to be proud of. Hilton Hogan has said the civil works will be about $1 million. We've budgeted to 2.5 million to get it right, to make something special, to make it a destination, to make it the beginning of something special. I won't actually bore you too much with the 4 pillars here that we think we've actually ticked the boxes in those 4 pillars that are part of your strategic plan. But we want to make it the beginning for biking, fishing, swimming, walking, etc. And we want to make a decent investment in the land to so we don't end up with just a piece of concrete. So it's going to end up being a place for safety for people parking. We have video cameras, On our back car park, someone said to me the other day, oh, you get motorbikes racing there. We don't get motorbikes now. It's going to be a very safe environment. Lights, security cameras, all well controlled currently like we do have. We think it will enhance the area. The beginning of outdoor activities. Become a tourist donation. Tourist donation. Not donation, a tourist destination.
Same thing, really.
And it'll add value to the EIT experience. But we need it to be future-proof for us, and future-proofing so we can expand is not putting it out the back. Issues. There's more issues now than when the paper was last presented to you. But we see issues just an opportunity to get it more right. To get and consult and talk and work through the issues. I believe that by working together on those issues, we can actually get better outcomes for all of us. Let's enhance the area as the base for the community. Because they're using part of our car park at the moment, so let's do it properly, do it bigger, and let's enhance the community access, because they're going to be using it on weekends, not us. They're going to be using it during school holidays, not us. But together, I think we can make Hawke's Bay a better place with what we want to do over the riverbank. So working together, we'll produce far better well-being outcomes for our community. Far better, far better. So that's what we're not going to build. Does anyone know where this is? Yep, Guppy Road. We're not building that. We're building this. So help us spend 6.4 million of government money on the community, on our youth of the future. It's so show central government. We're unified, cohesive, integrated approach we as a community have. Don't make me give the money back.
Thank you, Craig. Questions, Martin?
Yeah, look, let's just get to the nub of this. Thank you, Craig, for that presentation on that last point. Resonates with me for sure. But the what's the bottom line here on the number of car parks you actually need? Because is this being driven? I mean, I've never heard of a car park being a destination. The destination here is the arena. So is the bottom line here what the city council's requirements for car parks are? Or you said if we could get away with building that space? I mean, what's your bottom line from an arena perspective on, you know, minimising the number of car parks?
We don't need any more car parks than we've got.
Thank you.
Okay. We've got free access to all the car parks across the road. I don't know if that'll continue, but at the moment, EIT arrangement lets us use their car parks.
Thank you. That's the answer. That was.
So why are we building the car parks if we don't need any more?
We want to build on that land. We want to build here.
We want to put arenas on the
So, so the point is that you need more car parks because you're building on car parks.
Yeah. Doing exactly the same as the sports park are doing. Ripping up a car park and putting a building on it.
Well, that's
And if we put it out
that's
the back,
another problem.
in 5 years' time, we're going to rip up another car park and build out the back.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just clarify that answer, there are additional car parks required as a result of the expansion.
Yeah, as well, yeah.
As well. So it's
So
not
how
just
many?
the fact that we're building on the existing car park.
How many?
There are further car parks required in addition to what's currently.
How many in total?
I don't know what their number is.
They've given us an estimate of 150. We had a phone call this morning, so it might be less. So resource consent will determine that.
Okay. Michelle, your question.
Oh, yeah, so cultural impact assessment, why isn't there one? What
part
was
of
your
the resource
engagement
consent.
with mana whenua? Because there could be sites of significance where you're talking about, so what's your engagement with Ngāti Pāro?
That's part of the resource consent process and some discussions.
Why wasn't it
have
done
been
before? You're presenting a case and you've gone for PGF funding and you have to show that you've engaged with
No, we
Tangata
went-
Whenua,
we
got
went
support
for-
from
we
them,
didn't
most
go for
especially
GP.
mana whenua.
We didn't go for
Let me
PGF
finish my
funding.
question. So I see nothing in here about cultural impact assessment. I see nothing in here with about your engagement with mana whenua, sites of significance. You know, you're talking about near the awa. There would have been things that went on in those days. And you've got the Tātara Pā right there. So it's a major hole in here.
It's not a requirement.
And talking about youth, you know, for, what is it, 6.4 million, don't want to give it back. You know, the whānau standing up and saying, no, I want to play indoors. You know, I played in the rain. Didn't kill me. You know, harden up. And there's the sports ground park there that we had Te Matatini at. And you know, you say you want to give that money, you're using the rangatahi. You know, rangatahi could do with houses. Rangatahi could do with other help. Big Flash Stadium and cultural impact assessment. Cross. Kia ora.
Thank you, Michelle. We always get a clear view from Wairoa. Thank you. Any other questions? Craig, we're going to move along here. Other Craig?
Yeah, just quickly, does your car park have to be like you've in these various pictures, or have you not finalised your actual ideal model, like asphalt or concrete or whatever? Are there other alternatives? And B, can you comment on one thing that's of major concern to us is the integrity of the stop bank, and that doesn't seem to feature in any of the slides. So could you talk, or someone talk to that a bit? So there's the car park itself, and then how to get over it. Are you proposing anything other than just a track on the stop bank, or what?
They've done a lot. Transport people have done a lot of work to get the angle going across the stop bank correct, and then we do have some plans on that. In terms of the flood protection, that there are quite a few issues there. It's not a simple, hey, we're just whacking a car park there. We've looked at the the hexagon things that grass grows through. That'll be a discussion as an option. We've looked at, hey, we don't necessarily need it all in one style, because most of the time we don't need that extra car parks. If you go around there now, there's nobody parking there. So we wanted this to be given. Sure. At the weekends, people come to the park there and they go over the stop bank at the moment. So they come and park there. Various e-bike trips start there. People start there and park there for the pump track, etc., etc. We're moving that over this.
So as far as this council's concerned, that stop bank's on its balance sheet, and so is there possible for an agreement where, regards to what the engineers are saying, there's an indemnity to this council because of, we say, okay, if we did, go ahead, but we're indemnified against any damage to a stop bank. Got to be a very high standard for the access part. And then if there are any issues further down the line and around the car park in the event of something, both now, during construction and in the future, is that possible to be put on the table in some way, shape or form?
It's possible.
That we're certainly subject.
But that's the issues. We want to address all the issues.
Yeah, I know. So let's go to the pointy issues, because for this council, the pointy issues, I'm sure everyone loves the idea. You know, I'm a huge fan of it. It's great, except there's the things that we've got to worry about, which is the integrity of the stop bank and what that may mean culturally and otherwise, where the cars are parked. That's where my only concerns, and help me mitigate that. And
it's been described, right? You've got good flood warning systems up the bank, up the river.
Thank you, Craig. I need to interrupt you there because we're going to deal with that in the next item, Craig.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, that is the technical one, so we won't go. Neil, you give me the last question because I want to get the Can you wait for the next item, or do you?
Just a question coming up with the car park numbers. Who requires them and how many?
That's your
same question. How many car parks are you looking? You're wanting to locate car parks on the reserve. How many car parks do you want, and how big a footprint do you want?
I can't give you the exact answer to that, apart
I
from
find that
saying
incredible,
it's 400.
Craig.
400.
Quite honestly, I find it incredible that you don't know how many car parks you want.
I probably would say the same thing. I can't believe that the planners can't tell us the number of car parks that we were required to provide under resource consent. So I'd agree with that. But it's potentially.
So to respond to your question, the traffic impact assessment is currently being undertaken to support the resource consent application, along with a number of other technical reports, including considering the issue of flooding, as well as the issue of stop bank and integrity and potential erosion.
Yeah, okay, get all that. I'll get all that.
So that's all been undertaken, and that's all coming together to produce the sorts of answers that you're interested in. But the car parking is going to fall somewhere between 350 to 500 car parks. We're trying to actually reduce it as much as we can, so as to not create something bigger than what's actually needed. But that work is still being done because it's a bit of a knitting together of a number of different influencing factors.
Who is making the decision about the number of car parks? Is it going to be Napier City, based on a policy, or based on an actual what is needed, or a future-based policy we were relying more on public transport and other sorts of things?
So it'll be determined under the provisions of their district plan, and there will be some interpretive matters that they'll need to work through in terms of the reports that Cam was referring to before they reach a conclusion on that.
Okay, team, I want to move on now. Craig, thank you very much, and thanks for the other team. Do we have someone to move that we accept those two presentations, please?
I'll move.
Rick and second Jerif. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? We'll move to the salient reason that we're here. Item 9. Chris, you're going to tell us the other point of view, are you?
There's always different sides to every story.
No matter how flat a pancake, there's always two sides to it.
Chris, we've got 15 minutes, but we're going to have to go a bit over because...
So I'm not going to trawl through the paper. I'll take the paper as read. There's a couple of key points
and then
that I want to make. And then Craig's here to give us some technical information around how often the site has flooded and how our flood forecasting and things like that work. But he'll be quite quick.
25 years.
So I won't go through where we are in the process. I think everyone is aware of that. And last time I was asked to do some work around assessing this particular project against some of our values and focus areas. So I have done that, and that's in the paper through section 73 to 85. But really to create some, I guess, points to consider while you deliberate on the decision. The first is probably for at least 3 years and maybe longer, the Regional Council has been providing consistent advice to the proponent and their agents that we don't support from an officer perspective, from a staff perspective, putting a significant car park into the hazard zone within the scheme. So we haven't changed our view over a long period of time. And I guess the proponents, because of the funding, need to make an urgent decision, and I guess they're creating a situation where this is the only option on the table. And I do just want to remind everyone there remains two options on the table: the car park behind the building and the car park in the flood scheme. So there are still two options on the table, and the EIT has previously said that they wouldn't provide the land if car park went on the Napier Reserve. But that surely can be negotiated through, should that be an area we want to explore. So it really has become a political issue at this council table, with really a request from the proponent to make a decision by tomorrow. So there's a whole lot of factors that we would normally look into on a significant project like this. Part of it is in our current environment where we do have a climate emergency and a significant loss of biodiversity, that we'll be potentially losing, what is the justification for a 1 hectare, and repeat, it's at least 1 hectare of pavement in our flood reserve area. How does that address our climate emergency and our biodiversity loss? Where should we be working? The other part is this is a bit of a risky decision for the council to take. We've undertaken no consultation on this particular issue with tangata whenua or the community. It's a rapid decision requirement, and we haven't had the time to do that. And I understand neither has the proponent, and they see that consultation occurring as part of the consenting process. It is actually counter draft plans that we have presented back to the Environment Committee in 2018 around our public use of rivers, but we acknowledge those plans are in draft. And there has been no assessment of the cultural values of that particular site as well. So again, that's a risk in our relationship with tangata whenua, and it is in close proximity to the Tautura Path, so I guess there's some expectation around that. So on the numbers that we've been given by the proponent is an initial car park of 385 sites, and that's 1 hectare in size, and ultimate plans of up to 535 car parks on that size, so that's 1 and a bit hectares. In your packs, I think attachment 4 shows what we, if a car park did go in, how we would see it, and we see it happening differently to the proponents' artwork, in which they have the car park going right to the centre line of the stop bank. We want to place it probably 20 or 40 metres off the toe, and part of that is under we have IRG funding of $20 million that we're investing in that scheme. That particular stop bank is one of the highest consequence of failure sections of stop bank that we have. And so, look, anything is possible from an engineering perspective. It's just around getting it right and spending the right amount of money. So it doesn't provide any great risk. It just has to be treated in the right way and have the right sorts of features. So we would see if a car park did go ahead, it would be a lot longer and skinnier than shown by the proponent, and in fact would be 300 metres long. So if you compared it to the the walking distance, it gets closer and closer to the walking distance behind the facility as well. So I think there's just some key points for consideration, particularly the summary on our values. If we look at our focus areas, and Craig put them up around infrastructure, etc., I think we have a different view that this project doesn't support our focus areas, and I've articulated why in the paper, so I won't repeat that. If you are coming to a decision where you'd like to support the car park, I think there's some other comments, is that we have a funding agreement with the IRG through the PDU. And we've put in our first claim for $500,000, so we're off and running on that project, and we're planning substantial works in that location in the third quarter of next calendar year. So we can work with the proponent, but also acknowledge that we have contractual conditions to meet milestones under our own contract, so we need to be cognisant of that. We need to consider any cost impact to the regional council, and I guess at the moment we're not planning to contribute to any of the costs of the car park or different arrangements that may be required with our stop bank. We'd like the proponent, to look at the provision for event-based parking. I think the parking calculation is probably a bit of an old school thought. It doesn't really allow for public transport, it doesn't allow for sort of Uber buses, doesn't allow for cycling along our fantastic network to that destination. And we're very much supportive of having temporary event-based parking within our river areas, and in fact we do that in Central Hawke's Bay for the various events that they have up there. So that's, pushing back on part of the probably older school consenting rules to downgrade the volume of car parks. And when I was out there on the other Saturday grabbing a subway, and there's heaps of people playing sport, the whole entire back car park was empty and the front car park was half empty. So these car park numbers are really generated by I'm just imagining events rather than the day-to-day use. I think we need to comment on the relative timeframes for consenting. I think our view is the timeframe is extremely optimistic. I'm not sure how a consent will be submitted tomorrow for this project. There is also a discretionary activity consent required to from the regional council required to put the car park in that area. So there's a bit of work to do there. I mentioned to be cognisant of the work we've done in the public use of rivers, and we could be losing that opportunity for perpetuity, but we could also build in an opportunity to a combined car park for visitors to the river. So with that, I just wanted to hand over to Craig, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the paper, and Craig will just take us through the actual flood history. So we would very much disagree with the statement that that site had never flooded in 25 years, and Craig will put up some evidence to show what's been going on.
Great, floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Chris. As you notice, Chris and Craig, so if we do need to refer to each other, Craig Goodyear, Chris Dolly, as opposed to the other Craig and Chris. Thank you. So Chris has covered quite a few things, but I'll briefly go through this. Tudaikura catchment is a rather big catchment, 820 square kilometres, comes down through this narrow stretch to go from Red Cliff out to the sea. That particular stretch of stop bank is a high consequence of failure with all the urban area behind it. No big news there. We've already talked about that. Just want to give you an idea of actually what happens during an event. I'm involved in flood forecasting all the time. We've got a whole crew doing it. So what happens is that we get warnings, Met Service warnings. We start looking at rain forecasts. We look at any information that we can get to help us decide on this sort of thing. And that's Met Service forecast. They forecast the rain, the swell, the snow, and the wind. We look at the rainfall radar, and we look at our system, our hydrotel system. And then even social media, if we get reports of something going on. So now we have to try and determine what's the location of this event, what's the scale, what's the possible damage, and then we come up with a water level forecast. And we use our flood forecasting system to do that. We have to input unknown rainfall to that in order to get that system to give us some sort of forecast. Once we have that forecast, we come up with, do we notify people for evacuations, that type of stuff. So that gives you an overview of that sort of thing. We've got lots of rainfall stations, and these are actually really good when we have widespread events, which, up to the 50, 100-year level events, because the rainfall will be covering some rainfall stations there. What the problem is, when we have, here's the Tudor-Curry catchment again, if we start having rainfall events that are a little bit more localized, it won't show up on our radar, or in our rainfall stations. And I'll show you in a couple of minutes why I think this is important. So you could easily have situations where the rain gauges don't give you enough information. So we have water level recorders. We've got three on there, Mangaone, Naroto, and Pukitapu. And the travel times for those are such that it's, say, from Naroto down to Pukitapu and then Pukitapu to this site. It's about 2 or 3 hours lead time if there is already an event on. So it's fairly short. Now, we use computer models to establish how the river responds to these flows. This particular model, we've calibrated to Cyclone Bola. We've had it peer-reviewed by NIWA, the hydrology part, and DHI for the hydraulic part. So we're quite confident that this model actually provides some good evidence of how this reacts. So based on the modeling, about a 5-year event will start to flood the area. Now I say start to flood the area. When an event is happening, we don't know that it's a 5-year event or a 50-year event, so we have to monitor it all the way through. So that's a big issue that the EIT people may not have seen flooding in 25 years, but whether they're looking at the right spot and whether they're cognizant of the potential. Now in September 2015, actually I received a phone call from a lady that lives just beside the car park from EIT. She said, there's water flowing out of the EIT car park. And what happened, we believe, is that the floodgate was blocked open by some debris. That indicates to me, during that event, which is shown on sorry, over here, that bit there, that was high enough for the water to flow back up there, back up into the EIT car park, and then into Hetley Crescent. So to me, that was an indication that that event was high enough to flood this area. Here's a picture of the flood in the Tudor-Curry River in that event. Doesn't quite show the car park, the EIT. That would be up. EIT would be up in this area here. Sorry, yeah, down that way a bit more. Can't quite see it, but the fact that there was water on the berms. Oh, I can't see it there. Yeah, the water on the berms here and water here really indicates to me that it was probably 1/2 meter or so deep. I don't know exactly. I'll stand to be corrected if it's wrong, but in the car park, probably around that area. Now, here is the discharge hydrograph for the Tudor-Curry River at Pukitapu from 68 to 2020. So we've got 52 years of data there. And if, where'd my red pen go? I lost my, we'll look up here. If we look at these, there's three events there. Oh, sorry about my scribbling. We got 4 events that occurred within 3 years of each other. And if you were in just after September 1988 saying, we want to put a car park here, you probably said, you're crazy. It floods all the time there. But then we had quite a few years with not much going on until the last couple of years. So September 2015 was the one I just showed. June 2018 was higher. So we think in general, somewhere between 7 and 13 times in the last 52 years it's flooded. That's about once every 4 to 7.5 years, approximately. We don't know exactly with that. If we're looking at some system where we're trying to say, look, we want to protect people from this flooding, we would come up with a warning level. And if we pick some level that I think is appropriate, it's probably going to be about 26 times in the last 52 years. That's about once every 2nd year. We also have what we call watches for a lot of rainfall events where we do a lot of stuff in the background that nobody knows about. That's probably 5 or 10 times a year that we do that sort of stuff, that this might be happening. That gives me a lot of concern, because our civil defense people have to make that decision to go out and say, well, we think it's time to close the car park, evacuate people, and it may be completely dry, but that's what we have to deal with. And it's a big liability and it's a big pressure. Now here's a cross-section across the river at the spot where the stadium is. It gives you a perspective of where the stop bank is, how high it is, where the proposed car park, and I'll keep losing my little thing here. So, in this area, there's the height of a car, 1.4, 1.5 meters high. In a flood event, if there's cars there, that's a big problem for us. Cars will be floating down the river, hitting the bridge. There's all sorts of environmental problems with that sort of aspect. That's what we think about when we see car park in the flood zone. I'm sure there's pluses and minuses both ways, but when we're talking about risk, we look at low probability events which have high consequences. That's what this is to us. And now Chris mentioned that we're in the process of looking at increasing the stability of this stop bank, and we'll need silt for extraction. That's where we're going to take it from the berm right in there. Final slide here is just we've put on the potential for the 385 car parks here, sort of longer and thinner. That distance at the end is only about 50 meters. That's probably just to give a scale of that sort of thing. Also, with the people walking from the stop bank option, they have to negotiate up and over a 3-meter high stop bank. So that's it. End of story for me. If I made it quick enough.
That's very good.
Thank you. Thanks, Craig.
It's a pretty good presentation. Questions?
Question, thank you. Look, just the key issue, other than the number of car parks, which is ultimately going to be needed, is centred on, for me, paragraphs 52 and 53 of your report, which says that the section of the stop bank has been assessed as a critical component of the scheme due to the high consequences of failure, and it's a point you've touched on here. But what I don't really understand is how putting a car park on the other side of the stop bank in any form, whether that, leaving aside the risk to the car park, the cars themselves, exacerbates in any way the risk to Taradale.
Yeah, so
that's what I would like to landing on.
Yeah, so as I said before, it doesn't. That can be managed, and that's part of the reason we would want to leave a gap between the car park and the toe of the stop bank. And the other thing is we would have certain conditions for the car park. So, things like fences and things like that, we wouldn't want to see those sorts of things there. So technically we can work around all the issues. Technically it can be done. Technically it doesn't add any material risk to that area of the stop bank. It's really the non-technical, social, environmental type issues that are of concern.
So if there was a condition of consent which said something like that the ultimate design for the car park arrived at has to be certified to the satisfaction of the group manager asset management, that it wouldn't exacerbate the flood risk to the surrounding communities, Would that go some way to addressing the flood risk concern?
So again, we're not worried about the technical aspect of having the car park there impacting the stop bank. Craig alluded to, in an event, we would have vehicles trundling down the river. I guess that's a bit of a side issue.
Private property risk.
Yep, and it's part of our, how we would be engaged in any major legal action where $4 or $5 million worth of cars might end up being ridden on.
Question.
Yes, right.
Would it be possible to try and mitigate the risk that Craig made it very clear that part of the consent was that the car park was to be closed to ingoing cars at a certain point, that they were accepted that could only be accessed by outgoing cars? And would it be possible to have a condition on the arena that in the event that there was a flood warning, that they were responsible for making sure all the existing cars on the car park were towed out, forcibly removed?
Yeah, so look, I think we can, and that's probably a perfect world. There is the car park down in the Greater Wellington region, which is similar. That is much older and it's probably been created over time, but they do lose vehicles from time to time down there. With any consent, so the applicant would have to apply for a consent for this structure.
Yep.
And they apply for that consent to the consenting authority, which is part of the regional council. And the asset management group would only provide advice to that consenting authority, and then the consenting authority would consider the matter. So we can't, the engineers can't necessarily hardwire any conditions. We can provide advice to the consenting authority, which in all likelihood will take great weight, but wouldn't necessarily be mandatory. And with all these systems, when we rely on people and look at an unlikely event that there's a concert or a kapahaka concert where the place is absolutely full, it's indoors so people don't mind that it rains, the cars are there, and then there's a flood forecast, we have to empty the facility, people have to move their cars, that is a possible outcome. And it's quite different from the small car parks that we have for recreation, because people generally visit the river when the weather's fine, they walk the dog, they ride their bike, they're very unlikely to attend when it's raining. So we can have lots of provisions about gates and locking gates, that will come with a cost, people won't always do what they're told, and invariably I'd expect there to be some loss at some point in the next 10 or 20 years, etc.
Neil.
Yeah, two issues in my mind should we proceed. One is the liability, insurance liability. Have we got legal advice and insurer advice as to what our liability is?
So no, we haven't got any specific advice around that. I think it's an area that we just raised that we'd need to look into.
Second thing is that Craig's raised the issue of damage to the infrastructure. If we were to put on the eastern end of the bank where the 50-metre thing is there, put a fencing structure in, what would be the consequence for river flow, flood flow, if we had, even a couple of dozen cars banked up on a fence at that end? Can we prevent cars or any objects going down the river, intersecting with the infrastructure? What would be the consequence for the fate of the riverbank at that point if that were to eventuate?
Have a go at that, Craig?
I would say during any flood event, and I've been through quite a few, something always goes wrong. So there's potential for something to go wrong, there's potential for it to work just as you had planned. So it'd be very hard to claim that you'll have a solution there that will solve the problem that you're trying to solve. One of the issues that I would worry about is that, say you did have some system at the 50-metre mark there that trapped cars. Mm-hmm. When you put something in the flow, it tends to have higher velocities around it, and that's what scours things. So a bunch of cars near the stop bank would not be desirable, so you'd have to prevent that. With a lot of things, though, because we've just had a rocket launch, we can launch rockets. Surely we can do something. It's money. How much money do you want to spend on that? How practical it is? what can you do to solve it and have it. Bearing in mind, there's always human involvement with this sort of stuff too. So I think it's that risk, weighing up those risks.
Mike and then Joe.
So Craig, so you talked about the a local incident. So we just had Napier. Just had recent downpour in Napier. The proposed development here, how would that have coped in that circumstance?
Yeah, the Tudor Curry didn't come up at all. The rainfall was so localized in Napier.
Correct.
Yep. Yeah. Now, if I could add, we probably would have evacuated the place there because you just can't predict the rainfall that well, and we would be on the conservative side and say there's a risk, close the door, close the gate.
Given the speed at which it fell, and the intensity of which it fell, how much time would you have got if that localised rainfall had been a bit further up as to where this particular area is?
Yep. Now, luckily, with a catchment such as this is bigger, the time of concentration is more like 6 or 7 hours. But then we don't know where that rain is falling until we've measured it. Then the recorder, we pull the rainfall stations every hour. So there's a couple of hours lead time. So it's hard to compare it to that event and the effect in Napier that was so localized and very quick, whereas this would be longer drawn out, a little bit more advanced warning, but there's still risk involved in that.
Correct. So my other question to that one is, so I understand the development that's been proposed here. What downstream effect would that have in regards to any other development in the future that wishes to use flood-back protection land? Because that's the other part of this. Once the door's open for one, there will always be others who will see a potential to develop. So what's the?
I don't think I can answer that. Please, someone else.
Look, I think one of the things, if council is of a mind to proceed down this path, we want to make it very clear publicly that this is not a precedent that we would want to see replicated again within the region, just given the cumulative effect of having to manage these sorts of issues and how contrary it is to our overall strategy of increasing our resilience to climate change, and also our river berms being increasingly used for their ecological function as opposed to their hard infrastructural function.
But for any developer, once that door is open, it is open. They will always test it. And I think you kind of hit it towards the end there, and you were talking about, what is the purpose of the regional council in regards to flood protection. We either do that or we do this. But we actually can't do both. Is my point. Can't do both. Sure.
Joe, if you have a question.
Yeah, so I've got a question. If you go to handout, in the handout on page number 8, and you'll see the stop bank or the motorway impeding quite severely into the flow of the river. And obviously that will have an effect on the velocity of the flow, because it actually now has to go through a narrower path.
Which is one of my presentations?
That particular handout.
Yeah.
So you can actually pull even up on the screen if it wants to work, but if it doesn't, we've got it all in front of us. So if you... Actually,
we'll go through it.
So my question is, can we actually have an interim protection of the car park by actually building what we would call a summer dike or a flood protection point, where you actually maybe have a interim flood protection system around the car park that diverts away the flow, and once it gets to a certain height, that actually then that area actually can be used to flow over as a flow out. Is that possible? Has that been considered?
So we haven't, so I don't think the proponents looked at that idea. I think we haven't done any work around that idea. We can do some work around that idea, and then it would be looking at the cost implications and who pays for such a thing. But it's
I hope it won't be us.
Something that could be looked at.
Yeah, thank you.
Good question. Craig?
Yeah, just to narrow things down a wee bit. So I hear your concerns and everything, absolutely, and I respect all those, but just to quantify it, so a real concern of danger here is there's a localised rain event in the areas, for example, you highlighted, which other monitors don't pick up, and then there's the the other car parks are full because therefore this one needs to be used. And obviously there's an event on, so there's a whole lot more people there than normal for whatever reason. So that's actually the nub of our risk management, if you like. It's still real. I absolutely understand that. But when I read your paper, it screams no. But now I'm hearing, but actually there is possible solutions to your concerns, never 100% mitigation of your concern, I get that. But there's actually seems to be, the 50 metre extra, the buffer, so there seems to be a solution here. Now, I absolutely hear you about how on earth will a consent go in tomorrow and all those things. Yeah. I don't know, I'm very annoyed about it as much as anybody else, but it is what it is. So you're looking for a solution at the moment, or at least to try and bridge it. I really appreciate it. Because also, I think, with all the concerns you talked about, climate change, etc., well, the residents of Hawke's Bay will also are very concerned about access to facilities such as this. We've missed out for so long. So there is something else on the other side of the ledger here which weighs heavily. So the climate change of active sport and people in our region is actually, to me, slightly higher than some of our other priorities. So can you just comment a little bit more, but just that cost thing of, say, the solutions or ways through that you've kind of thought about, are they massively, significantly more expensive than what these guys have proposed originally? And then, obviously, someone else is going to be paying for it. You'll be designing it. Or something.
So I think a couple of comments. One would be time. So Craig from the PGA has made it very clear they're on a very tight time frame. And to do that sort of engineering analysis and design would take some time. And for instance, we're on full tilt on a $30 million capital program. So for us to fit in that sort of work would mean some of our own work would be deferred, but we can outsource that work as well. But it would take time to run through and understand what it means. Generally, with rivers, if you fix a problem in one area, you can end up creating a problem in another. So you've got to sort of chase it through. So I wouldn't want to, put any firm view around it, except that it would likely be at least in the hundreds of thousands of dollars of technical work and any earthworks and things required. And if there was a decision, we're very open to integrating that work appropriately with our own work that we're doing at that site, because it would be silly to do it separately. But it does come with uncertainty around it. It will definitely take time, and there'll be at this current moment a high level of uncertainty on the cost. That probably 300,000 plus, and depending exactly how you want to jig it and whether we want to bring in fill and lift it up, or because really we want to utilise a lot of that silt that's there to widen the wall. So we actually want to lower it, which is counter probably what should be done if it's a car park. So look, there's always a technical solution. It's just time and money, and how much money is available and how much time is available are the two key factors as to whether that can be looked at.
Thank you.
Martin, back to you.
I was actually going to put a motion.
Just one very brief question. Just looking at your graph 33 and the assessment, the objective assessment result.
Yeah.
I'm surprised, given the rest of your paper, that the preferred option scored so well versus the other one. Can you tell me? I can recall there being different figures there.
33, the assessment.
The paragraph in the paper.
Yes, so it is the lower the score, the better.
That's right. So
they're reasonable. So they're not massively apart. They are reasonably close. So we did discard the hybrid option.
Sure. They look like different figures than what we've seen before. Why is that?
They should be the same. So they weren't amended.
They haven't been amended.
There is a slightly different version at Napier City Council because there was a change to that assessment after we agreed, but the change was not particularly material. So we ran with the original version.
Anyone go? Last
Chris
question, then we'll go to you, Mark.
Yeah. So, Chris, what you talked about the factors that we may have skipped in terms of this rush process, which we all
Yep.
know what it's like through Crown funding.
Yep.
What are the major sort of points that we have skipped, that if we had a longer period to do this, just so that we have a roundabout of what we're risking, really?
Yeah, so look, I think the risk is mainly reputational. So we make a decision without any due diligence around the cultural assessment of the site, is one thing. We have presented in a public forum alternate plans for that site through the use of public rivers project, which was put on hold pending working out the level of service work to 1 in 500, and then we'd recommence on that public use of rivers. So we have had in the public arena alternate plans for that site. We haven't consulted with any of our community around putting a car park there, and we know from the proponent there's been little consultation because that will be part of the consenting process. And then we do a lot of work around risk minimisation. So our flood schemes is all around minimising risk to the community. Civil defence is all about planning for risk and minimising risk. And so it's a symbol of us effectively knowingly putting third-party and private infrastructure in a more hazardous zone that it could alternatively be placed. So you don't always have an option. And all we're saying is there still is two options, and it's about working through those options. And Napier City Council has very much favoured their option in their committee, and they go to council tomorrow. So it's a committee recommendation at this point. It's not a council decision, and they'll work through that issue tomorrow. So I think it's not a technical risk. We can manage that. It's more a reputational risk about how we make decisions, how we consult, and the symbolism of those decisions with the other work that we do.
Martin?
Thank you. Yeah, look, I just think, you know, much as I don't like being held to ransom, put against a wall, gun to our head, and that's the reality of the situation here. I'm very concerned about the lack of a cultural impact assessment. I can't see how you're going to get a consent application in tomorrow. But with all of that said, bearing in mind what Craig has just shared as well, the resolution I have is that in principle we go with this subject to 4 or 5 what I would call caveats, 2 or 3 of which could be conditions of consent. First is that the proponent here table a robust indemnity and assumption of full liability and risk relative to any private property exposure generated through the types of events that Craig shared with us, and we'd need to sign off on that. The two is that there'd be a condition of consent requiring that following detailed design, an independent engineer certify that the selected option, and to the satisfaction of the group manager asset management, would not affect the integrity of the stop bank, including in alignment with our proposed program of works for that stop bank. So there'll have to be a condition of consent that there is that independent certification, that there's no, as you've said, can be done. And that would leave by a bit of time for the detailed design and equally the consent process, because I'm hearing from Mr. Jury that the traffic engineer's report's not even ready. So again, I don't know how this is going in tomorrow, but that's the next point. A plea, an invocation to Napier City Council to minimise, get off its high horse on car park requirements, and what do these guys actually need? The National Policy Statement on Urban Development is coming out saying it's taking minimum car park requirements out of the district plan. I'm with Councillor Van Beek on this. The great irony is that we need the stop bank to protect against climate change, and yet it's the use of private cars which is the very greatest exacerbator in our country, and we're talking about taking car parks, cars to park on the damn thing. So there is an irony in there, and if we can really ratchet that down, I think the various concerns of all the parties, I understand future-proofing, but we've been put into this situation, and that would have to be, you know, the absolute bare minimum to replace the car parks that are lost with the extension. I think we need a flood risk management plan condition where, in the event that there is a trigger that you have got time to deal with, it's close the car park, get out, whatever you can do. warnings to use at own risk, that sort of thing. And finally, and I thank Councillor Ormsby for this suggestion, if we were to run with this, a concern we were discussing is that there is an opportunity lost here in terms of environmental biodiversity and cultural experience, and that the idea of access to the Tutaikuri has been tabled. What about a form of environmental offsetting or mitigation in the way that this area is developed, so that you can, connect better with the use of the awa, and I think there'd probably have to be an archaeological cultural investigation as well type condition, and that cultural assessment would have to flow through the process. So that's the shopping list. The question I've got is whether on that in principle basis we can move now, so that they've got the PGA funding secure, and the project's not at risk, but buying time for some of that detailed work that you were talking about, Chris, to happen through the process of implementation. So that's I move that we.
So thank you, Martin. We have a mover, and I guess you're saying that the option, recommendation 3, being that we do go over the stock bank, subject to all those things: cultural report, tenant to federal consultation, indemnifying, and environmental report, etc., etc. We need to write all those down.
Flood risk management plan.
Yeah. Need to put those into the recommendation.
You've got them noted. Yep.
Noted.
And it's on video.
So, I think Martin said it all. Do we have a seconder? You'll second that, Rick? Do you wish to speak?
The only thing I'd say, this has been a very useful conversation, but there's 2 things I'd like to make the point out. I feel the regional council has been ambushed by this. I feel it's been unnecessarily ambushed on this. I'm disturbed to learn that the EIT, for example, debated this months ago with plans to use our land, never talked to us. The Pettigrew Green Arena has had this plan for quite some time, has never revealed it to us directly. We've been left out of the loop, and then we've been told that we don't get this done, decided this time, we'll lose all this money, we'll lose this and lose that and lose the other. It's almost like blackmail, actually. I just feel that we have been put in an almost impossible position over this, and I want to make it very clear to PGA and to the EIT, I resent that. I would expect them to behave in a way which was open, transparent, and engage us right from the outset, and not leave us the last minute to do this. This is my view, poor process by people who should know better. The other thing I feel about this is that I'm supportive of Martin's resolution, because I also feel very strongly that the alternative, which is to build on a reserve, is unacceptable to me. We should not be utilising our reserves for these sorts of purposes. Reserves are there for public access, public enjoyment, quiet enjoyment, for people to rest and relax, and we should preserve them at all costs. The idea of building on a reserve is just repugnant to me. Again, this comes back to, I just think we haven't been thinking and planning as well as we should do. This is a failure on all of us, actually. We should not be in this position. I accept the report from our officer. I thought your staff report is excellent, thoughtful, considered, measured, class work, thank you, given the time. And you almost made me change your mind at the end, but it was, as you'd expect, thoroughly professional, dispassionate, and we got the facts. But having weighed them all up, at the end you have to make a judgment. And I just think the idea of having, I don't need to be persuaded of the merits of the Pettigrew Green Arena. We do need car parking up there, and the alternative is to build on a reserve, which I just find I would really struggle to do. So I just think it needs to be the best bad outcome, and let's all learn from this and hopefully do things better in the future.
Thank you. Before, Jeff, you want to say something, but I just want to comment on one part of your speech, Rick. In fairness, the Pettigrew Arena have been talking to us about this for a very long time. I actually visited the site, and I think this is a classic case of the PGF funding putting pressure on, and we've been caught in this ourselves. All of a sudden we've got to make a decision around funding, and we're getting calls from various politicians saying, if you don't do this, you'll lose the funding to Hawke's Bay. So That's the thing that's a little bit disturbing. I guess disturbing to them as well as disturbing to us. But we have been on the loop on this for a long time.
Well, with respect, you going on a tour is you going on a tour. It's not a paper the council consider for decision.
No, it's not. There hasn't been a paper.
But that's my point, is it should have been a paper.
Was this that, could you? Jared?
Yeah. I totally agree with the ambush, and I won't actually go into detail with what Rick had already said, but I still personally believe from active movement in Hawke's Bay, and the facility that we're trying to create is just absolutely fantastic, and that's something we really need, and it's really good for our economy, it's good for our young people, but also for us who are not so young anymore, you know. So I really support it. I definitely do hope that the car park, if there is a car park, that it will be a lot smaller than what is being proposed, and I think we all agree it doesn't need to be that big, and that we actually make something world class. And there are car parks around the world that actually are world class, that actually are on on flood protections, and they actually are a part of that whole system, and it look like part of the system, but they're actually absolutely robust even through flood situations. So, and on that basis, I do support it with the additional wording that Martin has put in.
We'll go. Craig's hand up, then you, anyway.
Thanks. With respect to everything that's been said, because the timeliness and all that, and perhaps that's all banked, I agree with all of that. But I'd really much like to finish on a positive note, in that thanking the Trust for their vision to apply and everything the Trust does above and beyond in delivering for our community. An outstanding facility. I remember being at the fundraisers for the PG Pettigrew Green Arena before it even was built, and now this is another iteration of that. So hopefully, well, at least I'm very, very supportive of the work they're doing, as I think we all are. These bumps in the road, hopefully we can avoid them or manage them better going forward. But at the end of the day, if we come to a decent solution, Hawke's Bay will be better off for the work that everyone's done in this place. So particularly acknowledge the Trust and your leadership team and sponsors for getting us at least this far. So thank you.
Yeah, so I'm really supportive of the motion, and it's sort of a bit of a compromise, I suppose, so that there's wins everywhere. Because, you know, to be honest, you know, we have to do our job and the values that we set and the mandate that we're given by the community to do that. I want to thank the staff from both councils on working together on finding solutions. And it has been hard, but I think we've come to a place where we could all be happy about. So thank you for doing that, and I suppose there's still more work to be done. So thank you for doing that in the future as well. Kia ora.
Neil, and then Mike, we're going to finish with you, Mike.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Clearly a lot of issues to contemplate, and I'm pleased to see a number of very significant hurdles to be achieved before we turn any soil whatsoever. And if those are not satisfied, then we need to pull the pin on this, because those risks are real. And thanks to our staff for pointing that out. I would like to say, though, that this becomes a real balancing act between the risks that are inevitably there, and the community needs to know that we have carefully evaluated those risks. We'll try and mitigate as much as we can. But look, Craig Waterhouse's work in this regard, and the Trust, in pulling together the money to make it even on this table, is an extraordinary effort. And hats off to Craig and his team for pulling such a thing together in the time that they've had and the environment they've had. So they certainly did. Congratulations. There's no doubt that the facility is needed, that the community will be better off, but it must understand those risks. And I hope that out of this, the enthusiasm to build this facility and to have that opportunity there must be mitigated by an appreciation of the risks. And we've got to really work hard on resolving that. So congratulations to the Trust for those reasons, but I would like them to reflect very long and hard about their responsibility in managing what is inevitably an increasing, exponentially growing problem with climate and the waters that we need to contain.
My one's just more around a clarification. So I do take the point that Martin said in regards to, as part of the resource consent, that there should be a cultural impact report, there should be an environmental report, there should be an archaeological report. Given the time constraints, the political pressure that's been applied here, I'm not taking that to be guaranteed. So are we able to put that into our resolution that that is actually a condition?
That was part of the motion, that the implementation, pre-implementation, it's quite common for resource consents to have a condition that there is a full archaeological investigation and a cultural impact assessment prior to the development commencing, with appropriate responses and involvement of mana whenua, etc., or archaeologists where things are uncovered, and you deal with that in your detailed design. It feeds into the engineering.
Martin, do you want to wind up, or can we go straight?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, look, if it wasn't for the assurance that this wasn't going to increase the risk to our communities, I wouldn't have gone close to it, whatever the pressure. But I'm happy, very pleased for all the reasons have been shared about the benefits of this facility that I can do so.
Okay, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? It's unanimous. Thank you very much for everybody. We're half an hour over time, having a shocker. Thanks to all our guests.
And we haven't even said it. You said it yourself.
Okay. Thank you for our guests. Sorry. Time for breaking. Yeah, we're breaking. We've got a deal for you.
Which will get fleshed out with them maybe for a minute, to see if I get all the... So we want provision of an indemnity, and it's from the trust to HUC, and I'll fill in the detail of that, but resource conditions